coalesce. So sort of working into it still a bit, in the sense the areas that I've been working on have been really to do with this polymer clay and building up various layers. And how I look at it is it's creating various colours and layering them to create a kind of complex system. Now this is a sort of orangey look here, and I'm just sort of working it in on top. So this is a layering on top of other layers of the polymer clay, and that's adhering to the paint that's priming the base clay, which is the air-dried clay. So I've got the basic structure underneath the air-dried clay, which is this wire, and on top of that the fiberglass and various other fibers, like even I've got some silk there, and then that's adhered to through a resin, sort of like an epoxy kind of fiberglass resin, and then I've painted on top of that and put the air-dried clay. And I found that when I tried at the beginning to construct the polymer clay on the air-dried clay, it just didn't stick as good. It's still a little bit funny, but it's sticking a lot better than before on the paint. So the acrylic paint is really a great primer, as well as just a bit of a cover for this air-dried clay. And so it's sort of working in there really nicely. It's getting there, and there's a few crumbs, but that's okay. That's just the way this works. And the nice thing about the polymer clay is that I can really just shape it, and I have found that it does harden up fairly much. This is starting to harden, so after a few days, and once I've put it in the sun on glass, the heat is to the degree like a slow oven, so then it really hardens up. And if I want to, I can always put some epoxy resin on the top of that to really just sort of seal it all in. So, then I can sort of work on how to position the bits and pieces on the top here. So the guitar, and this is like a chunk of resin. So yeah, this is like the center, I guess. Why would there'd be a broken guitar there? And I guess that's with these pieces. I might find one sort of thematic, iconic piece, a found object that's, been distressed. So it's got the distressed look, a little bit like, those sneakers and jeans that have been distressed on as a look, as a brand. Well, as if you've worn them for a long time, and this is the same sort of, sentiment, I guess, to a degree. It's showing a kind of a general distress look. Even here, there's this cracking occurring. So, the piece, because they've been going on for over I started this piece in 2017, and so it's been out there in the environment, outdoors, so it's been cracked, and I paint over it, and so it has these different iterations. I see it as these are ongoing kind of works in progress, and it's almost like there's a sensory memory, like that's very direct. Within the last few days, I had a sensation of all these colours, and I'm playing with that sensory memory, but there's also the episodic memory of the past, and the deep past, the real deep past, like from the 70s, which is the guitar, and that's overlaid on this sort of procedural memory that I record that, the process I had was using the wire, and this was done like a couple of years ago, to actually give the frame, the fiberglass, more rigidity, so I could put the clay on there. So I do recall this sort of process being the procedural memory, so that at least it can be engineered in a way that it holds up. So that's like one of the features of art, is that you do need to have a bit of a procedural memory. Otherwise, things tend to, they could fall apart, which is part of it, I suppose. But it gives it a bit of a history. So I could write that down. But then there's this sort of semantic memory, which I'm interested in too, and that's how the episodic memory and the semantic memory sort of create, artwork. So that when they come together, they sort of have meaning. Episodic memory goes back very long distance. So it goes back, say, for example, I recall watching Countdown in the 70s as a kid, and you have this real sense of like that was a time and a place. But the semantic memory sort of captures the content that has been linking. There's a sort of coherence element there, coherent knowledge, so that I recall the meaning of, for example, this system in relation to current popular culture, which is a selfie. So this is like the selfie stick, and this is sort of like a fan. So we had in the 70s, you're a fan of these icon rock stars. We're rock solid in our use of selfie sticks. That's the metaphor of like the guitar. So this is kind of our sense of personal identity, or identity politics has transformed. A lot of the rock has been taken up by these corporate sectors. They've been bought up all the rights. I recently heard that Kiss claimed that they sold all their rights, every brand, paraphernalia, and so that might go to sort of like Spotify or Apple Music, so I can access it through my Apple Music, all the stuff there from a 70s rock band. And it used to be only, obviously, in the 70s through the TV, I recall sitting there where we plugged the TV into the battery of a car battery. And so now the change has been from that particular mode of accessing it through the broadcasting media, like the Australian broadcasting media, to one where we're accessing through, a server farm somewhere and a data center that's been all over, that has stations all over the world. So for example, I could go to travel to India and still plug in and listen, as long as I've got my subscription. So it's a very much a global situation where when we stream now, we have this ability to access it as long as we've got internet access. So it has changed the role, and that's what I'm trying to kind of portray in this piece. It's still modernity, but it's transformed, and now the guitar is sort of broken off. It's a relic. Using electronic instruments, different soundscapes can be created. Even in the 80s and 90s, I recall the guitar was very much part of the culture. It was mediated through all these pedals, like the wah-wah pedal, and I recall in the 90s I had a friend that was really good, and I was starting to learn guitar and introducing me to all these different, props that you could use. And arguably now with, the rise of artificial intelligence, where it can actually kind of learn, we've probably seen the end of kind of an era of this personal sense of being a creator to one where it's a collaboration. So there's no sort of personal kind of rock stars, but there's a sort of collaboration where it'll be how humans can use artificial intelligence to construct a kind of a soundscape that will bring hedonic valence to their listeners, and it'll be that's the valence. It'll be the hedonic valence rather than the identity politics of being a particular charismatic person, in like a band or a person within a band. They were superstars. So you had the stars, the band members, and then the superstars. Arguably that role of identity politics has become more aligned with populism. So where you have a popular kind of brand, so it's become brandified. And so the brand being then maybe the use of different kinds of media to bring about a good valence, a hedonic valence. And so you'll desire more of that. And that's what this mixed media in some sense is doing. It's sort of creating a scape of a historical narrative that shows how these different identity politics, these different colours are like identities, have constructed a kind of reality where we're using these artifacts like the selfie stick and the guitar to like construct a very, very complex, interdependent world that has in some sense these plastic constructions about them, or plastic in the sense they're very kind of liquid or rubbery, you know, like this clay here, that can be sort of knead into different areas, and that's then can be overlaid. So the whole notion is that as people are so-called creators, they're actually, what they're doing is assimilating. So they're more assimilators. So we're not really creating anything, but we're assimilating, and that assimilation constructs a field. So this is the creator is just change. It's a very bland way to look at being a creative, that I'm into change, but there's a kind of directional change rather than sort of change through organic chemistry, where things change. We look at a chemical compound and we see it, colour or something change. Well, we're now not only observers, but we're participators. Anthropologists talk about observer participators. So when you go to a group, you participate as well as observe, and that's not creating anything, but rather just participating. And so the whole notion of the artist as a creator is now being deconstructed. We're at the role that there are no more creators, but there are just forms of participation and overlaying that participation, primarily because modernity has now become so complex that no one can create anything anyway. We're done. No one's going to create anything new. I had to buy all this. I'm not being able to create any of this. So all I can do with all of this stuff is put it together in a fashion, and that's it. If I create anything, I haven't created this. This is not a creation. This is just a participation within the modern structure, and participating in a way that it's now constructed a new layer within modernity that sort of is a bit of a, mixed media. That's why I do call it like mixed media, because of that nature in relation to modernisation. So unless I was working in a chemistry lab where I was creating, and this is a notion whereas I was creating a new compound, that would then be a sense that these people have sort of like particular powers, and they do. Usually people with doctorates in chemistry can then know something, but that will sort of soon be eclipsed if we reach AGI and then superintelligence. That's the idea. There won't be any chemists out there apart from AGIs doing it, and so the role ultimately of the human creator will be assimilated. But that doesn't mean we can't have valence. We could still use artificial intelligence to construct, because it's not creating in that sense. It's constructing. And the creation then would be a sense that what we're doing is putting together those constructions that create a valence. So that might be a new thread of emotion that humans have to discover. So these are sort of new fields of the mind. Hopefully this is a field of the mind.